Hi, and welcome back to the Shane Plays Out of the Abyss Notes series, where I kind of give my tips and thoughts on running Out of the Abyss, which is the D&D 5th edition Underdark adventure, with my party of intrepid players at my friendly local game store. And also, I'll try to kind of maybe just give advice or give insight to what's going on in my head as I DM, my style, maybe rules, clarifications, or interesting notes or that sort of thing. So if you're a new viewer, just want to point out this is not an actual play. This is just sort of a recap, color commentary / analysis of Out of the Abyss, and kind of being a DM. And if you're a returning viewer, thanks so much for being back, because you know what it's all about, and I appreciate all of my viewers. So let's waste no time, and let's put on the +3 spectacles of viewer feedback and get right into viewer feedback. So here we go. Let's take a look. First thing we had back was from Mike Fuller, who had written in before, and when I was talking about how do we want to do group communications, and I was looking at possible different ways. Now, what it ultimately landed on was just a Facebook group, and believe it or not, one or two people actually had to create a Facebook account to participate in that. So we can't take it for granted that everybody has a Facebook account. And then again, I had one player who doesn't have a mobile phone, so using some kind of app was not the best solution. So, but anyway, one of the things that Mike Fuller had written about was Basecamp, and Basecamp is a great product. It's been around for years. When I went and checked it out, there was no free option. However, he said, Mike said, I thought the same thing initially about Basecamp regarding cost. However, I emailed them directly. You're allowed one project or account, one project / account, non-business for free. So he says he's used it for almost 2 years now without any cost. It's awesome. So that sure would be nice if they put that on their website. But Mike, I do appreciate you following up with that and pointing that out. So because I did look, and I saw one that was free for like students and teachers. So anyway, okay. Next up is Valendrave. He said, Shane, can you give us a breakdown on the evolution of the party from Velkenvelve to now? Which NPCs are still there from the beginning, if any? What is the group makeup now? Are they all still the same characters from the first half? Any of the characters from White Plume Mountain with them? What is the breakdown of the group at this point, race, class? So, okay. So I'll address that a little bit at a time. The only NPCs that are still with them from Velkenvelve are Eldith. Eldith is, in fact, the lieutenant of their expedition, and Eldith, as I've said before, has become a very important NPC for our party for Out of the Abyss. One, storytelling-wise, she's become a close friend, but she's also, actually, we have a whole character sheet for her. So when drop-in players who are checking the group out, or somebody who's just, there for one night or whatever, it's very handy. Instead of, let's stop everything and make a character for, you may not even ever come back. Again, I play at a store. We let them play Eldith. Or if somebody loses their character and needs to flesh out the remainder of the session or something, then they can play Eldith. So it works out really well. That's the only NPC that's still actively with the party. Stool made it back to the Myconids in Neverlight Grove. Jimjar left them in Gracklestug, but then showed back up in Blingdenstone and kind of spoke on their behalf. So he's still around. Shushar is around somewhere. And then Globagool, the sentient gelatinous cube, is still around. So there's still a few NPCs. Several died. Raunt, I think, was the first to die. Prince Darendale died. Serendith, is it Serendith, that drow that had the fungal inspection? He died. Topsy and Turvy were killed by an overly enthusiastic paladin, which has been the subject of many comments and debate on this video series. People saying, paladins don't have to be that way, and I agree, But anyway, most of the NPCs, I'd say about roughly half of the NPCs died. The other half made it to safety. And there's an interesting thing about Jimjar. and this is the kind of thing why I ask my players, don't watch these videos until the adventure is completely over. Don't even go back and watch the first half, because I may be alluding to things that I'll do in the future. Jim Jar can actually, there's a sidebar towards the back of the book. I need to go find it again. I had somebody point it out to me, where he can actually, I think, be a deity that's been kind of helping things along. So, and I may do that. And plus Jim Jar is just kind of a very fun, he's, the deep gnome that likes to gamble and all that stuff. And we had a lot of fun with Jim Jar. Some other NPCs might show back up, but that's it. Eldith is the only active NPC that is still with the group, and she has a very active role. In fact, of course, she's the one for part 2 that visited them with the summons from King Bruenor. She's very close with King Bruenor. So there you go. Now that's on the NPC side. What is the group makeup now? So the group makeup now, and I just had this. I have these little roster sheets that I keep. This is the sort of the overall campaign roster sheet. Players that shows you how many players have kind of dropped in and dropped out over time, or had replacement characters. And this was the White Plume Mountain roster sheet that I kept, and you'll see I also track on that one. I tracked their XP, and I have a separate sheet that I track XP on for the main one. But as of right now, there is Elisor, who is a high elf cleric, if I remember right. Let me double check that. No, she's a wood elf cleric, and she's been there since the beginning. Well, her husband's been there since the beginning. She came in, I think she was there for the beginning of Out of the Abyss, or very close. Her husband plays Kellandis, a wood elf bard, and their sisters is how they do that. No, he's a half elf, even though the player's a female. So you've got, I'm kind of going around the table, how everybody said. You have Tom's brother, who plays his Charles, and I usually don't throw out first names on this, but just as I go around for this one video, well, Charles plays Thorin, which is just your straight up, warrior dwarf, and he's the one carrying Whelm, and we're having a lot of fun with that. Then we have Krista, and she's playing Elif, who is a warlock. So, and that is a moon elf warlock. Elif came in during White Plume Mountain, and for the previous Out of the Abyss, she played Catalyst, the tiefling rogue, who got aged, and a bunch of other crazy stuff happened to her. Then you've got William, who is playing currently Yashira, who is a human monk. But William is had several characters. Had Scorch. Had what did William play in? Here at Arizima and White Plume Mountain after Scorch. Has had the Paladin. Has had Anna. All these characters. William is the very interesting player who just has all these characters come through and do really interesting things that sometimes end horribly for his characters. So, but he's currently playing a human monk that is new for the second half of Out of the Abyss. Then we have I feel like a Ron. Ron is playing Grimy Peters, who is the dwarf rogue, who that's the one that's all disgusting, won't take a bath. And Ron used to play Daggers, who Daggers was the blind rogue that was very interesting and for the first part. In fact, we'll talk about Daggers a little bit more here in a second, viewer comments, because people were asking about Daggers. Then we have Blake, who is playing Quio, the I'm pretty sure it's a tiefling monk with the sort of outsider background, and Quio has been there since the beginning of Out of the Abyss. So Quio has been there since the beginning, the tiefling monk. Grimy has not. Grimy joined up towards the end of Grimy Peters, the dwarf rogue, joined up towards the end of White Plume Mountain. And then Yashira, the monk, the human monk, is new for the second half of Out of the Abyss. Elif is new from White Plume Mountain for Out of the Abyss. Thorin is an existing character, the dwarven warrior. Kellandus, the half-elf bard, and Elisor, the wood elf cleric, are all existing characters. So it's roughly half and half. And again, you know, we kind of use that Vanguard of the Eye Guild narrative device to kind of make sense of how everybody's, you know, different characters coming in and out and that sort of thing. And it's been a really good storytelling device. I think that's everything that Valendrave asked. It's interesting to me because somebody else asked this somewhere else, I think on the Out of the Abyss Facebook channel or group DMs, and it's interesting to me that that's interesting to people because I don't think about it a lot. But if that's interesting to you, I'm glad to answer those kind of questions. So I think I answered everything that the Valendrave asked. So thanks for your question, Valendrave. Let's see. Rob Plummer said, "Hey Shane, nice new setup." It's talking about the new video and the new mic and the new video webcam and the new mic and all that. Hopefully, you know, working on improving the quality of the videos that I do. I've still got a lot of tweaking to do. I'm not done yet. It's just a bit of a process to really dig in and you know, to improve and have a really super high quality setup. So he said, so Rob said, I use Elven Tower for this campaign. Talking about Elven Tower as a resource, an online resource. They also have a PDF that you can buy in the DMs Guild that's a bunch of tips for this adventure. And it's just really good. If you're running this adventure, I definitely recommend Elven Tower. And there's some other resources I've linked as well in the previous couple of videos. Rob said he even used his foreshadowing of Orcus that he cooked up at the midway point. My players thought I was nuts as they ran away. Now, I actually haven't read that part about Orcus, but evidently there's something really cool about Orcus in Elven Tower's Out of the Abyss notes and adventure guide. So again, I recommend it. There's another vote from Rob Plummer. So, okay. And then finally, last video, it may have been Ian Payne here, but somebody said, "Hey, I missed Daggers," and that was the blind rogue that had grown up in the circus and all this. And so I passed that comment along to the player, Ron. And so Ian wrote again and said, "Hey Shane, these videos have been a lot of fun to watch. I think I caught up on all the videos in a matter of 3 weeks." Wow. Are you mentally okay? Sorry. I got bronchitis. I'm not lying. I really got bronchitis. So, yeah, literally, I've got bronchitis. I just found out yesterday, but I'm not like need to be bedridden or anything like that. So, I think I caught up on all the videos in a matter of 3 weeks. Haha, thank you for the insight into this campaign. I just started putting my players through this module as well. They just escaped Elvara and are headed to Slubludop, and I'm curious to see how my players differ from yours. If I remember right, you said one of your players brought in a new character of using Daggers, the blind rogue, and then I think the comment got cut off because it said "I," but there's nothing else after that. Oh no, it was this video. It was this comment because I said I passed your comment to the player who ran Daggers. No, it wasn't from a previous video. And then Ron chimed in as Yertle Von Turtle now and said, "I'm not allowed to watch the video." That's true. I've asked my player. I mean, look, they're adults. They can do what they want. I mean, I don't. Are you watching the videos? But I've asked them not to, just to avoid spoilers and make the game more fun for everybody involved. However, he did say, "I'm not allowed to watch the video, but I wanted to reply about Daggers. After leaving the Underdark, he returned to the circus. He returned a survivor, but half insane and a drinker." That's right, because he got that indefinite madness that he only feels normal if he's drinking. Margot, his mentor, found a way to heal him. However, this stripped him of his magic and left him haunted. Daggers is not the man he was, and he hears the Underdark calling him. I'm keeping him leveled to match the current party adjusted. Cool. I'd love to have Daggers back at some point. He's an interesting character. Then Ian said, "That took a dark turn. Haha, I love flaws that cause actual detriments in the game. My player decided he was going to be missing a hand." And then Yertle Von Turtle, a.k.a. Ron, replied again and said, "I designed Daggers to be an arcane trickster, but the game started at level 1. How did he teach himself magic? He originally believed he was remembering the magic lessons that Margot, the circus magician, was teaching him. However, exposure to sunlight and healing magic appears to have flushed the magic from his system. He now suspects the power may have been from exposure to the fair's rest of the Underdark. So, and he said plus something, but I'm not seeing it here, so I think that got cut off too. So, as you can see, the player that plays Daggers, now Grimy, does very interesting creative things with his backstories and how he plays his characters. All my players are good. You know, Ron is a veteran who has played D&D for decades and, you know, just can really almost effortlessly go that extra mile with the creativity of his players or his characters. So anyway, that is it for viewer feedback. How's that hard to remember? For viewer feedback, so I'm going to take off my +3 spectacles of viewer feedback, and we will get into some notes and the recap from the most recent session. Okay, so another thing I had written down from the session the other night that wasn't mentioned in the comments here, when I mentioned to the player that somebody had said they missed Daggers, he gave me a note, said Daggers never actually joined the guild, which is true, because he was a how did he? Yeah, he never actually joined the guild. He went home to the circus before joining the guild. I think they were on the way to join the guild when they were kidnapped and taken to the Underdark. But he used his deck card to make it home to his circus. And if you remember, we had this totally out of the blue deck of many things that happened. It was a total like, whoa, out of the blue. I had said, you know, they were at a vendor or something like that. And somebody joked around and said, well, does he have a deck of many things? And I took percentile dice and I said, if I roll a 1, then yes, he does. And guess what? Shane the DM rolled a 1. So I honored that. And he gave 3 pulls from the deck of anything at, I can't remember, it was like 500 or 1,000 gold pieces. It was a lot. It was a high rate. And 3 players pulled, and luckily all of the cards were beneficial. And Ron's was that, or not Ron, Daggers was that he could get the answer to any question that he asked. So he used that off camera to get home, which is cool. Good role playing. See if I have anything else here that I want to mention. One thing that came up, and I may have mentioned this on this channel before, but somebody was asking, I think on the D&D Facebook group, just the D&D 5th edition Facebook group in general, talking about, you know, to use maps, battle maps or whatever. So here's what I do, and I've probably mentioned this before, so if this is not new to anybody, you know, maybe at least the new viewers will get benefit. I have one of the Paizo battle maps, which is just the 1-inch square grids, 2 different colors, and it's erasable, so, you know, you can use like a whiteboard marker on it and erase it. That's what I use for my up-close encounters, for battles, or if there's any other reason I need to draw out an area to make a point, or to, you know, to illustrate something in game. And that was actually a gift from my player who plays Daggers and now Grimy. He gave that to me, so thank you very much. He was just bringing it every week, and we were using it, and he gave it to me. So, but what I do is I have this whiteboard that I draw larger maps on this, but that I don't have to have exact scale or detail. And this is actually Mantol-Derith. Now it's, you know, it's got a few, you know, when I stuck it back in my bag, a little bit of it's been erased, but that's a very loose approximation of Mantol-Derith that they've discovered so far. So I kind of, this is real easy to draw stuff out on, and I, you know, just have little whiteboard markers, little magnets that I can put on here. And I use this, think of this like from computer games. This is like a mini map, right? Like up in the corner on the computer game, to kind of give you a general idea of where you're at and where you can go and where you've been and that sort of thing. And then this map is more like if a battle unfolds in the computer game, then we'll go into much more detail here. That's how I personally did it. I think it works out really well. But you don't have to do technically any mapping as a DM. Back in the day, the players did their own mapping. You described everything and they mapped it. And a couple of my players they'll map everything as I'm going, just to have a reference, because sometimes that whiteboard gets erased and something else starts going on it. A lot of times I'll redraw stuff, you know. We spoil our players, us DMs. So I just wanted to point that out. I thought that was kind of interesting. But having said that, I think that's all my notes and everything before the official recap begins. So let's head back into the Underdark. Okay. So at the end of when we last left our heroes, they had there's that trench that kind of runs, and I'll probably put a map up in the video, but there's a trench that runs through the middle of Mantol-Derith, and there's these little platforms that can lift people up. And on this side, the eastern side, is the Deep Gnomes and the Grey Dwarfs faction areas, and on this side are the Drow, and the western side of the Drow and the Zhentarim. This episode we're going to be focusing on the eastern side, over here, because that's where the initial drama unfolds. And never fear, there's some very interesting stuff happening on the western side too, between the Drow and the Zhentarim. Long story short, it doesn't take long for everyone to realize that the madness has infected Mantol-Derith, like it's infecting every other part of the Underdark. And Mantol-Derith it's sort of a neutral ground where factions who may not normally work together or get along, they've sort of established a truce. It's sort of neutral territory, and they all four have areas, and they trade, and they all specialize in types of items and stuff that they trade. So it's just sort of declared a truce for mutual benefit, and it's there's just a few rules. The rules basically boil down to, I gave them out last video: don't cheat in trading, or you'll be wrapped in chains and thrown into the Dark Lake. That's basically what it comes down to. The characters had been led to believe by their Zhentarim guides that it was a very orderly place. Disorder is bad for business. Order is good for business. The minute they arrived, they came up on the platforms, and they saw over on the eastern portion of Mantol-Derith. I'll read it again. It says, the trench bisects an enormous cavern with a 30-foot high ceiling supported by naturally formed stone naturally formed stone columns. Continual flame spells cast on stone lampposts reflect off crystals embedded in the walls and ceiling, illuminating myriad fountains, waterfalls, streams, and pools. Water drips from stalactites onto leather tarps covering clusters of merchant stalls west and east of the trench. We just talked about the west and eastern part. Beyond these marketplaces are well-tended gardens of mold and fungi, crystal walkways, and stone bridges. The tranquil beauty of Mantol-Derith is undone by sounds of combat to the northeast, where you hear the thunderous boom of metal against stone and see panicked svirfneblin running from 8-foot-tall duergar. Now, what's happened here is that, in general, the Grey Dwarf faction, because of madness, there's been sort of a domino effect, and it's described at the beginning of the chapter over this gem that has the essence of a demon lord in it. It's got svirfneblin. It's got his essence in it, and anybody who touches this gem, unless they make a will save, becomes immediately infected with some sort of madness. And that's led to this domino effect that has all the factions kind of starting to go crazy and be suspicious of each other, outright attack each other. So definitely read the svirfneblin's gem section on page 132 and 133. It's basically this person had it, and then that person had it, and this person stole it, and it's just a series of unfortunate events, really, that are eroding the order of Mantol-Derith as a trading post. Now, one person who's in the middle of it is Yantha Coaxrock, who is the leader of the Emerald Enclave from Blingdenstone. So she's in the middle of all this, and at this point she's been kidnapped by the Grey Dwarves. So when the players first arrive and look around, the first thing to see is these, because Grey Dwarves can enlarge themselves, and it adds to their strength difficulty checks or ability rolls, and it also adds, I think it doubles their dice damage when they're enlarged and they hit with something. So keep that in mind. And they're chasing a couple of deep gnomes, svirfneblin, Gesundheit, that have blurred themselves, because blur is one of their innate abilities. So that's the first thing they see. They see these, deep gnomes running, and a couple of gray, or actually the book says 2 gray dwarves. Due to the size of my party, I upped it to 4 gray dwarves, just to make it a little bit more interesting. I knew they wouldn't have a whole lot of trouble, because even though the dwarves they can hit kind of hard, and they have decent ACs at 16, they only have 26 hit points. So, your standard, your bog standard, if you will, garden variety gray dwarf, unless you bump it up, only has 26 hit points. So they'll go down pretty quick. So I had 4 of them, and they're just chasing. And the book doesn't explicitly say, but my players, of course, said, well, how far out are they? And I just said 60 feet. And I just arbitrarily said 60 feet. I figured that was kind of out of ways. And remember, this side of Mantol-Derith, the eastern side, all of the merchant stalls and tents, and they've been ransacked and ravaged and knocked over. And so it's just this kind of cluttery, it looks like halfway between, somebody tossing a room, looking for something, burglarizing the room, and at the same time, just out of anger, smashing stuff. So it's just all kind of smashed up. And the book doesn't say this, and I ended up not ruling this, even though I considered it. I considered making that entire area difficult terrain, just because of everything smashed up. I didn't. Just because I wanted this to kind of play out fairly quickly, because they can get, if they can save the gnomes, they can find out fairly quickly what's going on. But in retrospect, I think it would have been a very fair ruling to say that it's all difficult terrain. But so of course the players intervene, and there was some kind of discussion among the players, and I kind of messed up, and I had to kind of reel things back in, because I wanted a reason for the Zentarum. I wanted to, even though I could have said this is Zentarum guides, your Zentarum guides, there's like a couple of Zentarum with them, are not getting involved. I wanted a story reason. So the Zentarum took one look and said, whoa, and the players are like, what's going on? And they're like, well, this is we don't know. This is extremely bad and wrong. So the Zentarum are caught off guard just as much as the characters are. But I wanted a reason for the Zentarum to split and leave the players to handle it on their own. But of course, a couple of the players wanted to go with the Zentarum and split the party. So, which in this one, it was kind of my fault, because they know they need the Zentarum to find they need to find a certain Zentarum NPC who can get them to Graven Hollow, which is the Stone Giants Library, which is the next place they need to go on this adventure to try to get information that can help in this situation of the Demon Lords crashing into the Underdark. So, in my mind, I know that they're going to end up working with all the factions. Mantol-Derith's only so big, and da-da-da. But, the players are role-playing. And, they're just going off, hey, these Zentarum people are really important to us right now. So, there was a lot of discussion. What do we do? What do we do? And I went around there. I said, what do you want to do? And the basically everybody, and there was a couple of players kind of wanting to go with the Zentarum, but one, the dwarf rogue Grimy Peters said, I want to go with the Zentarum. I'm like, okay. I'm like, and I kind of did it to myself. So Zentarum split, Grimy goes with them, and then the rest of the party stays and fights the duergar and saves the gnomes. And there wasn't it wasn't a huge fight. It was a somewhat interesting fight, but I guess it was kind of huge because there was a bunch of enlarged duergar. But it was a decent fight, and I'll tell you, this session was really nice because I like role-playing sessions. And I like, storytelling and intrigue and all that. But we'd had, I think, 3 sessions, at least 2 full sessions, if not 3 sessions of role-playing with just one minor combat with fire elementals. And this session was, like, by the time everything's said and done, 16 enlarged duergar bit the dust. And they made bad career decisions and enlarged the XP pool of the party. And it just felt really good. It was almost cathartic. Like, let's just have some unadulterated combat. So that's what happened this session. And I'm not saying every session needs to be combat to be fun, but after 2 or 3 sessions of almost pure role playing, it was fun to do some combat, because combat's in D&D, and combat can be a fun part of D&D. They talk about these 3 pillars of D&D. I hear more and more about that lately. One is combat, one's exploration, and one is social interaction. So, sometimes just going with the combat can be a lot of fun. So, having said that, they defeated the duergar, and it's at one, and the svirfneblin just wanted to keep going. They were just running. They're trying to get back to their enclave for safety, because the duergar they're just like bloody enraged, wanting to kill the svirfneblin, which we'll get to here in a second. Why? But I really made that point to the players that the Grey Dwarves look murderous. I mean, they're just like, ah, and they're not just like, oh, these wacky rapscallion scallywag. I mean, they're like furiously bloody. I want to get my hands on you and rip you into pieces, angry at the svirfneblin. So, and at one point, the bard has a rod of rulership, and used it, and believe it or not, just by pure rolls, only one svirfneblin and one Grey Dwarf were charmed, and the rest weren't. But that was enough to get the svirfneblin to come on over to the players. So one of them's like, hey, you're my friend, and the other one's like, come on, we got to go. But his little gnome buddy is wanting to hang out with these new people, and he's kind of torn. But it was enough story-wise to get the gnomes to stop running towards their faction and come over and hang out with the characters. And then the Grey Dwarf that was charmed ended up breaking that charm, because his other 3 buddies, including his leader, were mercilessly dropped by the players. So he broke his, he's kind of like, and he broke his charm. Because his, the players were being hostile towards his faction. So, anyway, they talk to the Deep Gnomes, find out kind of what's going on, that the Grey Dwarves have gone on a murderous rampage, accusing the Deep Gnomes of stealing a gem, and Yantha Coaxrock is up in the middle of it, because Yantha, she'll occasionally come from Blingdenstone to trade. And she just happened to be here when that happened, and got caught up in all of it. And she's been actually kidnapped by the Grey Dwarves, and they're trying to force answers out of her. So, and I told the players, I said, they mentioned somebody named Yantha a couple of times, and that sounds really familiar to you. But I didn't come right out and say who it was. And they were like, oh, who? And they were asking more questions. I said, well, specifically those of you that were in the first part of the Underdark, it sounds familiar. And then, somebody's like, oh, the Emerald Enclave and all that, and or the Stoneheart Enclave. There's kind of an offshoot of the Emerald Enclave in Blingdenstone. I think it's called the Stoneheart Enclave. I'm not sure, but anyway, Yantha leads that up. So, but she happened to be in Blingdenstone. Or in Mantol-Derith, and she got caught up in the middle of all this. So here's what's going on. I'll kind of give you a little bit of background. We'll talk a little bit about the Grey Dwarves and the svirfneblin in Mantol-Derith tonight, or on this video, and then we'll talk a little bit about the other 2 factions, maybe next video, or we'll probably be in Mantol-Derith at least 2 or 3 sessions. So the svirfneblin Enclave says the Deep Gnomes look for any opportunity to corner the market on goods their competitors are in short supply of. So that's another thing. Each faction kind of specializes in stuff that that other factions don't. So everybody's not all selling the same stuff. Gabble Dripskillet, the svirfneblin, and this is on page 139. The svirfneblin chief negotiator used to sell salt, gemstones, and rare minerals from a stall in the Eastern Market. But she and several other svirfneblin merchants were forced to retreat to their warehouse when the duergar attacked. And there is a... trying to see... It says Gabble doesn't know what provoked the duergar into attacking her enclave, but she is friends with Yantha Coaxrock and would like to see this svirfneblin mage return safely. So so most of the, like this warehouse that the svirfneblin live in is not just a warehouse, but it's also where they live. And you know, they're all holed up in there, and you know, Gabble Dripskillet is on the first floor because the duergar are trying to break in, and she's prepared to negotiate, but the negotiations probably won't work in this case because the duergar are enraged and have madness. So all they know at this point is that the duergar have gone crazy, started attacking them, and they've kidnapped Yantha Coaxrock. So that's what's going on there. And the duergar and have Yantha at their enclave, their warehouse, and they're basically torturing her and getting close to killing her if they don't get the information they want about where's this gem. And Yantha has also contracted madness and is compelled to lie, even if it's in her own good to tell the truth. So lots of interesting things going on there. But remember, and I encourage you to read the entry on every faction to understand what's going on. And there's stuff going on with the Drow and the Zentarum too. But, the basic thing is there's this gem that has a demon lord in it. And if you crush that gem and release the demon lord, that gets rid of one of the demon lords by sending it back to the abyss. So it's possible in Mantol-Derith to literally get rid of one of the demon lords that are, threatening the abyss. So definitely read that entry on page 132 and 133 about Fraz Erblu's gem. So anyway, the players, the gnomes are like, we got to get back to our faction. We got to go. We got to get to our warehouse. And so thank you for saving us, and the players are like, what do we do? Do we go to Zentarum? Do we go with them? And I think they eventually decide to go with them to their enclave, which is good because it's, to get the most out of Mantol-Derith, you probably want to interact with all four factions. You don't have to. You could just get in there, hook up with the Zentarum, say to heck with everybody else, and split. You could do that. But, I'm wanting to have a little bit more interaction with Mantol-Derith than that personally with my players. But we'll see how deep it goes. So they decide to go. And then another player says, well, now that the battle's over, I'm going to go find the Zentarum and our buddy who left with them. And I'm like, oh no, they're splitting the party even further because I know there's a fairly big fight coming up. Remember, before everything's said and done, they fight 16 enlarged duergar in one session. So, and the gnomes, because the players were like telling the deep gnomes, hey, you're safe now and everything. And they're like, are you crazy? There's a lot more of them. We're not safe. Thank you for what you did, but we're not safe. We got to get back to our warehouse. So they all kind of go that way. And one player who's a monk, so I'm going to run and try to use tracking and all that to catch up with our buddies. And, by this time, they would have been told where each faction is. And in the, by their guides, they traveled together for almost a month and a half before they got here. And remember, the vast majority of the expedition, except for a couple of Zentarum guides, is camped outside of Mantol-Derith. So it's just the players and like Eldith and 2 Zentarum. That's basically who's inside Mantol-Derith. So I'm like, man, I got to reel this back in because not only is, splitting the party in general not usually a good thing to do. Players, listen. Yes, it's role-playing. Yes, you can do whatever you want with your character. But there's rarely a good reason for your character to run off on its own. For both the party's sake and for the DM's sanity, think about it before you go running off. And like I said, there may be some times where it makes sense. But 99% of the time, it doesn't make sense story-wise or for the extra effort the DM now has to put into things for your one character to go trotting off. And I've done it to DMs before, okay? Because story-wise, I'm like, well, this is what my character would do, okay? So, I'm down on, don't metagame. Metagaming is not good, In this case, try to metagame a little bit and think, does it really make sense for the story that the DM is trying to tell for me to go off on my own? Okay. Having said that, as a player, you can do that. And the DM, should go along with that. Okay, if you're going, well, now one thing I told the player who left and went with his Zentarum before the battle, I said, okay, out of character, you're going to be off scene for a while, and it may take us a while to get back to you. Are you okay with that? And he said, yeah. I said, okay. So, because that's another thing, if you leave the party to go off on your own thing as your character, you may be sitting on the sidelines for a while. So if you're like, well, nothing happened to my character tonight, I'm bored. Well, you left the main action. So just keep that in mind too. So it's kind of a delicate balance between, it's a sandbox imagination game where you can do whatever you want, but let's also acknowledge there's usually a main storyline that everybody's following at the same time. Okay, and then there's that 1% of the time where it makes sense to split the party. So now I've got the main party, and I have two characters running off on their own at two different times. I said I got to reel this in. So, and this was partially my fault by having the Zentarum bolt. And because they're like, oh, we can't lose track of the Zentarum. Fair enough, I caused that. So anyway, so what I had happened was that the two Zentarum are kind of fast walking, somewhat trotting, and they're seeing on the western side, because there's bridges you can go across, they're seeing on the western side that everything's closed down. All the stalls and market tents and all and tarps are not smashed over and trashed and everything, but they're just all closed up. There's no commerce happening. So there's serious stuff going on. And they're like, wow, this is not good. We got to find out what's going on. And we kind of had this fun thing where, like, Gorath, who's a Zentarum NPC, is kind of in charge, and the other Zentarum's like, what do you think's going on, Gorath? What do you think's going on? Huh? Gorath's like, I don't know, but it's serious, And it's kind of like the big bulldog and the little dog. What do you think? What do you think? So we had a little bit of fun with that. And what I had was they were, heading through the western side, and another Zentarum goes running by and sees them and comes running over. He's like, whoa, what do what's going on? And Gorath, is like, well, we just got here, and we have, patrons with us, customers basically, and we're trying to figure out what's going on. And the other Zentarum they met said, whoa, where are your customers? And he's like, well, on the eastern side. And the guy's like, whoa, there are crazy duergar everywhere. That's really dangerous. He's like, you need to go. And they're referring to the players as customers, as patrons. Not saying that they're warm-hearted, care about their fate, but hey, we got a rep to maintain. These are our paying customers. That cold, calculating kind of corporate way that people have. Like, man, if you're a customer, they will take care of you up and down. But if you're just a random person, they don't care, right? So it's kind of the same thing. And Gorath and company are like, and the others in Tarum, and then Grimy, like, who's this? And they're like, well, this is one of our customers, our patrons. And Grimy's like, hello. And the Zentarum's like, man, there's a big meeting happening at the Zentarum right now, between the Zentarum and the Drow. I got to get there right now, but you really need to go back and get your customers. So that's kind of how I, clumsily kind of tried to correct the situation that I helped cause. And about that time, the other character comes running up, the other monk, and, they're all like, oh, we got to get back. So they go running back. So, and there's a big meeting between the Drow and the Zentarum that's about to go horribly wrong again because of the madness. And, I realized how bad I kind of messed up story-wise by having the Zentarum run off and tempting the players to want to go with the Zentarum, because I don't want the main force of the group not to be there when this meeting between the Drow and the Zentarum goes horribly wrong. So, anyway, I messed that out. I messed that up, but I sure tried to fix it, and hopefully, the players seemed okay with it. And I was even like, don't split the party. And they were like, but you said this Zentarum went off. And I was like, yeah, you're right. So anyway, another thing I want to mention, it's in the book. If the players dig through all the smashed up stalls and everything on the eastern side, they can find some gems, some treasure that's worth a little bit. But anyway, back to the main action. And I was like, okay, Lucas swipe. And, we were even joking around. I was like, okay, everybody pause. Lucas swipe. I'm going to go to you. Lucas swipe. We go back to, the main action. So they go with the gnomes to the Deep Gnome Enclave, which is northeast. It's like it's like a big, let me grab my handy map here again. So, svirfneblin are northeast. And then the, what is that, southeast, I guess? If that's north? Yeah, northeast and southeast. The Grey Dwarves are southeast. Svirfneblin are northeast. So they come to this this fungal grove. Like each faction, or a couple of the factions at least, has sort of a fungal grove or garden in front of its main warehouse or headquarters. And they come to this fungal grove with the svirfneblin, and it says the fungal grove in the Deep Gnome Enclave has been left to grow wild. Strewn about the grove are the corpses of a dozen dead svirfneblin, all of whom were killed by duergar. And then at the northeast, just beyond the grove, there's set of stone double doors that have been barred from within, and there's 4 enlarged duergar that are just hammering on those doors with war picks, and they're trying to break through. This is just a matter of time before they break through. And then 8 more invisible duergar stand nearby, ready to storm the svirfneblin warehouse as soon as the doors crumble. So, and there's also in this grove, there's several exotic fungi. So if your players ask about that, there's like 2d6 barrel stalks and 2d6 torch stalks and 3d6 nilhog's noses and et cetera, et cetera. It's on page 140. So the players are like, whoa, and they see these 4, enlarged duergar just war picks bashing, trying to get through the warehouse. So they just attack immediately. And I gave them a surprise round because, the duergar aren't paying attention to them. So they got one surprise round. Because the svirfneblin are, they're just focused on knocking this door down, these double stone doors. So they just, got one. I think that the warlock threw, I can't remember the name of it. It's a really nasty spell where this like blackness, darkness envelops the opponents, and like there's tentacles and whispering and all kinds of horrible stuff in there. I can't remember the name of it. It's a nasty spell. So they just got that off for free. And then at that point, the other 8 svirfneblin, kind of went uninvisible. Even though I could have had them all attack invisible, I just went them for that dramatic effect I had. Tactically, it would have been smarter if the svirfneblin just stayed visible and attacked and all got, that invisible attack once, I guess with advantage. But I just had them all reveal themselves. And so now we have a fight with 12 enlarged duergar all at once. And it was a good fight. Again, this group is pretty handy. Even with 2, I think there were 5 members at this point, because the other 2 members were gone with their Centaurum. But they still did pretty well. And they did, they used a fireball and they did other stuff, and they had other spell going, and they had, just combat, and they did well. Of course you got Whelm in the middle of it, the returning hammer, legendary weapon. So, I actually probably could have thrown a few more duergar in and made it more of a challenge, but the timing worked out perfectly because we needed to wrap up and get home and all that. So it worked out just about perfect. Now, what I had happen was, I think on the second initiative, I allowed the monk who had run off to get back, pop in, because a monk can run faster. And then I think on the third round, I allowed Grimy Peters to show up because they were trying to get back to him. So they just, I think the battle lasted maybe 4 rounds, probably 3, but they were kind of popping in, again, not on the first round of initiative, but a little bit later reflect, they were just showing up, and I put them off a little further off so they had some movement to get into the battle. But that's basically, they defeated all this enlarged duergar, 16 total in one night. Everybody had a good time, a lot of joking around. It's one of those nights, some nights it's just flowing even more than usual, and you're just joking around and having a really good time. So we had a really good session. And I think I've gone over all my notes. I don't think there's anything else there to talk about. Now, we'll get even more into the duergar next video. I'm assuming that the players will go try to rescue Yantha Coaxrock. I'm assuming. We'll see. And so as we get to each faction, we'll go even deeper and deeper into what's going on with them. But thanks so much for watching the Shane Plays Out of the Abyss Notes series. Please leave a comment and a thumbs up. That helps me out tremendously. And please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. And we will catch you next time on Shane Plays.